My name is George Bennett. I am 82 years old. Once I was a man who was respected, listened to, waited for. Now I am a grandfather who is remembered on holidays. Sometimes it seems that I have turned into a shadow that moves silently through this house, contemplating how life rushes somewhere without it. My house is small, on the outskirts of Denver. I bought it with Mary, my wife, 40 years ago. Our children grew up here, laughter and screams, quarrels and reconciliation were heard here. But now, only silence. Mary died 8 years ago. Since then, this house has become empty in the truest sense. The children, Michael and Susan, live far away. Michael in Seattle, Susan in Boston. They come rarely, and each time for a short time. They explain, work, responsibilities, schedules. They didn't leave me at all. They call. Sometimes. But these conversations are like a ritual. Hello, Dad, how are you? Okay, how about you? Everything is fine. I have to run. I love you. They don't hear me say that my leg is swollen again, that I haven't gone outside all day because I'm afraid of falling. They don't ask how I deal with the loneliness of the night. Because the answer could burden them too much. My health has deteriorated. I can't see well in my left eye, my joints ache every morning, and my memory sometimes seems to slip through my fingers. I catch myself not remembering if I ate today. But I still live. I can still think, feel, remember. Last week there was an unfortunate incident. I went to the pharmacy, with a cane, as usual. The saleswoman looked at me with undisguised annoyance. Can't you hear? I ask you, do you need 10 or 20 pills, she said, as if I were a deaf old man, not a person. In the queue, people posed, some with pity, some with irritability. I could barely hold back my tears. Not because it hurts me. But because I became transparent. No one is interested in who I was, what I did, what I fought for, what I lost. I don't feel like I'm part of this world anymore. Television, social media, smartphones, everything flies forward, and I stay behind. Even grandchildren don't listen. Trevor is 17 and he's on the phone all the time. When I started talking about the first time I flew a fighter jet, he just nodded and muttered, "Yes, cool, Grandpa," and plunged back into TikTok. I then sat and looked at him, my grandson, my successor. And he doesn't even care who I am. Sometimes it seems to me that he just doesn't need people like me anymore. Isn't our experience worth anything? I used to be a pilot. A pilot in the U.S. Air Force. I flew over Vietnam, saw the jungle from above, heard the voices of the wounded on the radio, to whom we gave hope. I drove the plane, felt every shaking of the car, every movement of the steering wheel. It was my world, the sky, the speed, the duty. My boys and I were a family. We trusted each other more than ourselves. After the service, I went back to Mary's. She waited for me, sending letters every week. I read them to the sound of propellers, often in the rain, sometimes in a trench. She wrote, "George, come back. I planted our first tomato and it is already blooming. Like our dream." I lived for the sake of hugging her again. And hugged him. We got engaged a month after my return. I worked in a factory. He started with the lowest position, gradually became the head of the shift. In the evening he came home tired, but happy. Mary greeted me with the words, "George, the children were waiting for you, Michael fell off the bike today, and Susan painted you in the sky." I would sit next to them, listen to Susan say, "Parachute, funny, how Michael invents a new motor for the plane." I didn't just build a career. I was building a family. Every summer we went to the lake. My old pickup truck could barely pull the trailer, but the kids loved it. They screamed when I turned sharply, and Mary quarreled, but laughed too. Those evenings by the fire. I sometimes feel like they're still here somewhere. The smell of smoke, the rustle of the forest is heard, and Susan asks, is it true that you saved your friend in the sky, Daddy? I pulled Sam, my brother-in-law, out of the fight. The plane was damaged. I broke the order and returned for it. He could have died. But he couldn't leave a friend. For this I was awarded. But the most valuable reward is Sam's face when we sat down at the base and he said, "You're a brother, George." These memories are like treasures. But who needs them now? I try to tell my grandchildren, but they are not interested. They look at me like a book without a cover. It's so old that you don't even want to unfold it. And here I am sitting in a chair, holding a medal for courage in my hands. And I think, have I really become unimportant just because I can't walk fast? Perhaps the worst thing is how slowly, imperceptibly a feeling of burden appears. It doesn't come suddenly. It creeps up like a fog, first a light veil, and then a thick wall, through which nothing can be seen. This is not just physical weakness or forgetfulness. This is different. This is the look that you catch in the eyes of children when you said something wrong. That barely audible sigh when you again ask for an explanation of how to use the phone. The moment when they no longer ask you for advice, not because you don't know, but because they think it's not worth bothering. I remember one time when I wanted to help Michael with his car, just to look, to tell him what was wrong with the spark plugs. He replied, "Dad, thank you, but I'd rather be on my own. These are no longer the same cars as in your time." And smiled as if it were a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was, "You're off topic anymore. You are history." It's different with Susan. She is kind, attentive, but there is something in her voice that was not there before, patience that hides fatigue. She looks at me as a patient, not as a father. She has a first aid kit in her hands, not a photo album. She heals me more than she listens to me. I understand that she is a doctor. But I'm her dad. Once she ran to me with her knees ragged on the asphalt and cried. And I took her in my arms and whispered, "Everything will be fine, my little one." Now we have switched places. But I'm not ready to be a child yet. My day is a repetition. The same trajectory. I wake up, turn on the kettle, treat my leg, try not to forget if I took pills. I go out to the veranda and sit, watching how the seasons change. Autumn this year came early. The leaves fall like time. I sit wrapped in a blanket and think, when was the last time someone asked me about my thoughts? There are days when I go to the store just to be among people. And even there I am superfluous. Salespeople talk to me loudly, too clearly, as if I don't understand simple words. The young people in line don't notice me, even when I'm leaning on a cane. One woman once said to the child, "Don't stand here, otherwise the grandmother will fall." I turned around, thinking she was about someone else. But she was looking at me. On me, George Bennett. Even at the post office, I am treated as incapacitated. "Let me fill in for you," they say. And I want to do it myself. Because every such, "let me," takes another piece of dignity from me. Small but important. And the most painful thing is the grandchildren. I have no complaints about them. They are children of their time. But when Trevor arrives and sits on the couch with his headphones on, without looking up, I want to shout, "Look at me. I was like you. I dreamed, I fell in love, I fought. I am you, only a little later. But I'm silent. And every silence is like a scar inside. And so I sit in the evening in the dark, with the lights off. I wonder if I should call anyone at all. And then I avoid calls myself, because I don't want to feel rejected. I look at Mary's photo. She would know what to say. But it does not exist. And I'm left alone with my invisibility. It happened on a cloudy November day. The sky was low, gray, as if it deliberately depressed the mood. I woke up with pain in my leg, an old injury, from the army. I decided that I had to go out, at least take a walk to the store. He put on a warm sweater, wrapped himself in a scarf, took a cane and set off. Slowly, carefully, counting steps. Rain began to drip on the way. Small, but cold, icy. The wind whipped his face. I reached the store, feeling tired in every joint. At the entrance, he slipped on wet asphalt. Everything happened suddenly, my leg buckled, the cane slipped, and I fell. First he hit his shoulder, then his head. The world spun. People were passing by. Someone stopped for a moment, looked around, and walked on. A middle-aged man glanced at me, muttered, "You have to be careful," and disappeared outside the store door. I lay there, feeling not so much physical pain as deep humiliation. I am a former pilot, a veteran, a father of 2 children, a grandfather of 3 grandchildren, lying on the ground, like a homeless person, like a useless person. There is impotence in the eyes, bitterness in the chest. And then a man appeared nearby. He looks like my age or a little younger. He had gray hair, deep wrinkles and kind eyes. "Friend, give me your hand," he said. And his voice was warm and strong. He helped me up, held me by the elbow, led me to the bench under the canopy. "I'm Frank," he said, when I had recovered a little. "Are you all right?" I nodded. And he added, "George. Thank you, Frank. If it weren't for you." He smiled. I fell, too. More than once. And not only physically. I was despised in the hospital, called grandfather, in the bank. My granddaughter even said that my time was up. But you know what I've done. He did not reconcile. I began to act. We talked for more than an hour. I found out that Frank is also a veteran, he also lives alone. But he did not let life break him. He began attending the local veterans club, organizing meetings, writing memoirs. The most interesting thing is that he started hosting a podcast. We are still a voice, George. We have something to say. And our experience is not rubbish. This is a treasure. It just needs to be conveyed to people. Those words are deeply ingrained in my soul. I came home with a strange tremor inside. Not from the cold. For the first time in a long time, I felt that all was not lost. There are those who remember. And there are things I can still do. That evening I sat in my chair for a long time. In front of me is a photo of Mary, next to me is a medal that I held in my hands like a talisman. I mentally talked to her, "You would be proud of me, dear. I'm still alive. And I won't let these years turn me into a shadow." This was the moment when life was suddenly divided into before and after. That day, I was no longer a silent observer. I felt the desire to be an active participant again. And this feeling was stronger than all the medications that I have been prescribed in recent years. The next morning I woke up not from pain in my leg, not from senile insomnia, but from a clear feeling, you need to act. I don't know if it was a conversation with Frank or a silence that finally spoke to me in other words, but I no longer wanted to just sit, wither on the veranda, disappear into someone else's eyes. The desire to regain my dignity awakened in me. Not anger, not resentment, but dignity. Self-respect. To who I was, who I am, I took an old typewriter from the pantry. Mary gave it to me for my 50th birthday, with a joke, "Maybe you will start writing memoirs, because your children do not listen to you." Then we laughed. Today, her words sounded prophetic. I sat down at the kitchen table, put on my glasses, inserted a sheet of paper and began to write. The first lines were difficult. My hands were shaking, the letters came out unevenly. But I wrote. He wrote about himself, about the sky, about how he first saw Mary. How he held his son in his arms. How Susan taught to skate. I wrote everything. No embellishments. No regrets. A few days later, I took the pages to the local library, where I saw an advertisement for a literary circle for the elderly. I thought I would be ridiculed. But there I found listeners. And also new friends. People who also felt forgotten. Together we shared stories. Someone wrote about the war, someone about love. One woman, Margaret, was reading poetry about her late husband, and every word hit her heart. I met Alice, she was a former English teacher. Restrained, direct, but kind. She helped me structure the text, advised me on how best to present the dialogues, and even offered to design a book for the local archive. We became friends. We met weekly in the library, then started walking in the park. Her attentiveness, intelligence, and gentleness gave me back the feeling that I was still curious. That I can inspire. Be useful. And so, one day, I got ready and called Michael. Instead of the standard, "Hello, how are you?" I said, "I'm writing a book about my life. And I want you to be part of this story. Because without you, it is incomplete." There was silence at the other end of the line. And then I heard, "Dad, I'll fly next week." Susan reacted even more curiously. She came with an album containing our joint photos. She sat down next to me, showed me a shot of me carrying her on my shoulders, and said, "You're not just a father. You are my hero." I'm sorry I forgot that. We were silent for a long time, holding hands. And Trevor? He read a few pages and said, "Grandpa, you're like in a movie. Can I make a YouTube video about you?" And I laughed for the first time in years. I also joined the Veterans Club where Frank took me. Once a month, we performed in front of schoolchildren. They told and answered questions. And in their eyes I saw something else, not pity, not superiority, but respect. Interest. Someone came up after the speech, shook hands, said, "Thank you." And I believed them. My world did not change instantly. But with each action, I regained a piece of myself. Not youth but dignity. And that was enough to feel alive again. Life is a strange thing. It flows past you for years, like a river full of events, worries, joys and losses. And then one day you wake up and realize that the river has changed its course. And you stayed on the shore. The feeling of forgetfulness is not only a lack of care. This is erasure. It is as if you are being erased from the picture of the world, at first gently, imperceptibly, and then without regret. But now I know, you can only be completely erased when you allow yourself. When you accept that you are no longer interesting. I didn't resign. And I won't allow it. I'm already 82. I don't jump, run, fly a plane. But I think, I remember, I feel. I still have fire in me. It does not burn as it used to, but it burns. And this is enough to ignite something new. I finished the book. Alice helped publish it at a small local publishing house. It was bought by several libraries and schools. But most importantly, my children read it. My grandson. And even a few neighbors who had never stopped to talk before. Now, as they pass by my house, they wave at me and say, "Hello, George." And I smile. Frank and I have started a new initiative, recording short stories of seniors in our neighborhood. They called it Voices of Memory. We tell their stories on an online blog. They are different, funny, tragic, majestic. But all of them are real. And each one is worthy of attention. Every Sunday, Alice and I drink tea on the same bench near the library. We're not lovers, no. But we are more than friends. We are witnesses to each other. Sometimes being there is the most valuable thing you can give. My home came to life again. It plays music. I learned how to turn on Spotify. There's laughter in it. Trevor comes with his friends and shows them my album. There are conversations in it, long, unhurried, real. And it makes sense. Because now I know that even when the world forgets, you can remind it of who you are. This is a chance. This is a different form of being. It has its own gifts, memories, wisdom, the ability to see the main thing. Youth is movement. Old age is depth. And when both generations meet, wholeness is born. I would like to say to the young, do not be afraid of old age. It will come to everyone. And it is not terrible, if you live with love, with the truth, with a taste for the little things. Value time. Do not leave kind words for later. Because then it doesn't always come. And for the elders, do not be silent. Tell me. Even if no one seems to be listening. Tell everything, about your first love, about the war, about your grandmother's pies. Because this is exactly what memory is. And memory is the most important thing we can leave. I'm George Bennett. And I'm not a shadow. I am history. I am the voice. And I'm here. Even when the world seems deaf to your voice, speak. Because your story can be someone's inspiration. Subscribe and like, and send the video to your friends.